Naphtali's dreams of the division of the tribes. In the 132nd year of his life, Naphtali invited all his children to a banquet. The next morning, when he awoke, he told them that he was dying, but they would not believe him. He, however, praised the Lord and assured them that his death was due after the banquet of the day before. Then he addressed his last words to his children. I was born of Bilhah, and because Rachel had acted with cunning and given Jacob Bilhah instead of herself, I was called Naphtali. Rachel loved me, for I was born on her knees, and while I was still very young she was in the habit of kissing me and saying, "Oh, that I had a brother to you from my own body, one in your image." Therefore, Joseph resembled me in all respects in accordance with Rachel's prayer. My mother, Bilhah, was a daughter of Raphias, a brother of Deborah, Rebekah's nurse. Bilhah was born the same day as Rachel. As for Raphias, he was of the family of Abraham, a Chaldean, God-fearing, and a free man of noble birth. And when he was taken captive, he was bought by Laban and married to his slave Aina. She bore Raphias a daughter, and he called her Zilpah, after the name of the village in which he was taken captive. His second daughter he called Bilhah, saying, "My daughter is impetuous," for hardly was she born when she wanted to suckle. I was fleet of foot like a deer, and my father Jacob appointed me to be his messenger, and in his blessing he called me a deer on the fly. As the potter knows the vessel he fashions, how much it is to hold, and uses clay accordingly, so the Lord makes the body in conformity with the soul. And to agree with the capacity of the body, he plans the soul. The one corresponds to the other down to the third of a hair's breadth, for the whole of creation was made by weight and measure and rule. And as the potter knows the use of every vessel he fashions, so the Lord knows the body of his creature, to what point it will be steadfast in the good, and at what point it will fall into evil ways. Now then, my children, let your conduct be well ordered to good in the fear of the Lord. Do nothing that is ill-regulated or untimely, for though you tell your eye to hear, it cannot, much the same as you cannot do deeds of light while you abide in darkness. Furthermore, Naphtali said to his children, I give you no command concerning my silver or gold, or any other possession that I bequeath you. What I command you is not a hard matter, which you cannot do, but I speak to you concerning an easy thing, which you can do. Then his sons answered, Speak, Father, for we are listening to your words. Naphtali continued, I give you no command except regarding the fear of God, that you should serve him and follow after him. Then the sons of Naphtali asked, Wherefore does he require our service? And he replied, He needs no creature, but all creatures need him. Nevertheless, he has not created the world for nothing, but that men should fear him, and none should do to his neighbor what he would not have others do to him. His sons asked again, Father, have you observed that we strayed from the ways of the Lord, to the right or to the left? Naphtali replied, God is witness, and so am I witness for you, that it is as you say. But I fear regarding future times, that you may depart from the ways of the Lord, and follow after the idols of the stranger, and walk in the laws of the heathen peoples, and join yourselves to the son of Joseph instead of the sons of Levi and Judah. The sons of Naphtali again spoke, What reason have you for commanding this thing to us? Naphtali, because I know that the sons of Joseph will one day turn against the Lord, the God of their fathers, and it is they that will lead the sons of Israel into sin, and cause them to be driven away from their inheritance, their beautiful land, to a land that is not ours, even as it was Joseph that brought the Egyptian bondage down on us. I will tell you, my children, the vision I had while I was still a shepherd of flocks. I saw my brothers pasturing the herds with me, and our father approached and said, Up, my sons, each one take what he can in my presence." We answered and said to him, "What shall we take? We see nothing but the moon, the sun, and the stars." Then our father said, "These you shall take." Levi, hearing this, snatched up an ox goad, sprang up to the sun, sat on him, and rode. Judah did likewise. He jumped up to the moon and rode her. And the other 9 tribes did the same. Each rode his star or his planet in the heavens. Joseph alone remained behind on earth, and our father Jacob said to him, "My son, why have you not done like your brothers?" Joseph answered, "What right have men born of woman to be in the heavens, seeing that in the end they must stay on earth?" While Joseph was speaking so, a tall steer appeared before him. He had great pinions like the wings of the stork, and his horns were as long as those of the reem. Jacob urged his son, "Up, Joseph, mount the steer." Joseph did as his father told him, and Jacob went his way. For the space of 2 hours, Joseph displayed himself on the steer, sometimes galloping, sometimes flying, until he reached Judah. Then Joseph unfolded the standard in his hand and began to rain blows down on Judah with it. And when his brother demanded the reason for this treatment, he said, "Because you have 12 rods in your hand, and I have but 1. Give yours to me, and peace shall prevail between us." But Judah refused to do his bidding, and Joseph beat him until he dropped 10 rods, and only 2 remained in his clutch. Joseph now invited his brothers to abandon Judah and follow after him. They all did so except Benjamin, who stayed true to Judah. Levi was grieved over the desertion of Judah, and he descended from the sun. Towards the end of the day a storm broke out, and it scattered the brothers, so that no 2 were left together. When I gave an account of my vision to my father Jacob, he said, "It is but a dream. It can neither help nor harm." A short while thereafter another vision was revealed to me. I saw all of us together with our father at the shores of the sea, and a ship appeared in the midst of the sea, and it had neither sailors nor other crew. Our father spoke, "Do you see what I see?" And when we answered that we did, he commanded us to follow him. He took off his clothes and sprang into the sea, and we sprang after him. Levi and Judah were the first to scale the side of the ship. Our father cried after them, "See what is written on the mast, for there is no ship that does not bear the name of the owner on the mast." Levi and Judah scrutinized the writing, and what they read was this: "This ship and all its treasures belong to the son of Barachel." Jacob thanked God for having blessed him, not only on land but also on the sea, and he said to us, "Stretch forth your hands, and whatever each one of you seizes shall be his." Levi caught hold of the big mast, Judah of the second mast, next to Levi's, and the other brothers, with the exception of Joseph, took the oars, and Jacob himself seized the 2 rudders, used to guide the ship. He told Joseph to take an oar too, but he refused to do his father's bidding, and Jacob gave him one of the rudders. After our father had instructed us, each one in what we had to do, he disappeared, whereon Joseph took possession of the second rudder also. All went smoothly for a time, as long as Judah and Joseph acted together in harmony with each other, and Judah kept Joseph informed in what direction to steer. But a quarrel broke out between them, and Joseph did not guide the vessel in the way his father had commanded him. Judah attempted to direct him, and the vessel was wrecked on a rock. Levi and Judah descended from the masts, and likewise the other brothers left the ship and escaped to the shore. At this moment Jacob appeared, and he found us scattered in all directions, and we reported to him how Joseph had caused the vessel to run aground, because he had refused, out of jealousy of Judah and Levi, to steer it according to their instructions. Then Jacob asked us to show him the spot where we had lost the ship, of which only the masts were visible above the water. He emitted a whistle to us, and he swam out into the water, and raised the vessel as before. Turning to Joseph, he spoke, "My son, never do that again. Never permit jealousy of your brothers to master you. all your brothers nearly perished because of you." When I told my father what I had seen in this vision, he clasped his hands and tears flowed from his eyes, and he said, "My son, because the vision has now doubled, I am dismayed, and I shudder for my son Joseph. I loved him more than all of you, but by reason of his perverseness you will be carried away into captivity and scattered among the nations." Your first and your second vision are the same meaning. The vision is one. Therefore, my sons, I command you not to join yourselves to the sons of Joseph, but you shall join yourselves to the sons of Levi and Judah. I tell you, too, that my inheritance will be the best of Palestine, the middle of the earth. You will eat, and the delectable gifts of my portion will satisfy you. But I warn you not to kick in your prosperity, and not to become perverse, resisting the commands of God, who satisfies you with the best of his land, and not to forget your God, whom your father Abraham chose when the families of the earth were divided in the days of Peleg. The Lord descended with 70 angels, at their head Michael, and he commanded them to teach the 70 languages to the 70 families of Noah. The angels did according to the behest of God, and the holy Hebrew language remained only in the house of Shem and Eber, and in the house of their descendant Abraham. On this day of teaching languages, Michael came to each nation separately, and told the message with which God had charged you, saying, "I know the rebellion and confusion you have enacted against God. Now, make choice of him whom you will serve, and whom you will have as your mediator in heaven." Then spoke Nimrod the wicked, "In my eyes there is none greater than he that taught me the language of Cush." The other nations also answered in words like these, each one designating its angel. But Abraham said, "I choose none other than him that spoke, and the world was. In him I will have faith, and my seed forever and ever." Thenceforth God put every nation in care of its angel, but Abraham and his seed he kept for himself. Therefore I adjure you not to go astray and serve other gods besides him whom our fathers made choice of. You can perceive somewhat of his power in the creation of man. From head to foot is man wonderfully made. With his ears he hears, with his eyes he sees, with his brain he comprehends, and with his nose he smells. With the tubes of his throat he utters sounds. With his gullet he swallows food. With his tongue he articulates. With his mouth he forms words. With his hands he does his work. With his heart he meditates. With his spleen he laughs. With his liver he becomes angry. With his stomach he crushes his food. With his feet he walks. With his lungs he breathes. With his kidneys he makes resolutions. And none of his organs undergo a change in function. Each performs its own. Therefore, it behooves man to take heart who it is that has created him, and who has developed him from a foul-smelling drop in the womb of a woman, who has brought him to the light of the world, who has given sight to his eyes, and who has bestowed the power of motion on his feet, who makes him stand upright, who has infused the breath of life into him, and who has imparted his own pure spirit to him. Happy the man, therefore, that pollutes not the Holy Spirit of God within him by doing evil deeds, and good for him if he returns it to his Creator as he received it. After Naphtali had charged his children so, and with many other lessons like these, he enjoined them to carry his remains to Hebron, to be buried there near his fathers. Then he ate and drank with rejoicing, covered his face, and died. And his sons did according to all that their father Naphtali had commanded them. Gad's hatred. In the 125th year of his life, Gad assembled his sons, and he spoke to them, "I am the 9th son of Jacob, and I was a valiant shepherd of the flocks. I guarded the herds, and when a lion or any other wild beast approached, I pursued it, grabbed it by the foot, flung it a stone's throw from me, and in this way killed it. Once, for a period of 30 days, Joseph tended the flocks with us, And when he returned to our father, he told him that the sons of Zilpah and Bilhah slaughtered the best of the herds, and used the flesh without the knowledge of Reuben and Judah. He had seen me snatch a lamb out of the jaws of a bear, kill the bear, and slaughter the lamb, for it was too badly injured to live. I was angry with Joseph for his tale-bearing until he was sold into Egypt. I would neither look on him nor hear anything about him, for to our very faces he blamed us, because we had eaten the lamb without seeking the permission of Judah first. And whatever Joseph told our father, he believed. Now I confess my sin, that often I longed to kill him, for I hated him from the bottom of my heart. And on account of his dreams, I hated him still more, and I desired to destroy him from the land of the living. But Judah sold him by stealth to the Ishmaelites. Thus the God of our fathers saved him out of my hands, and he did not permit us to commit that abominable outrage. Hear now, my children, the words of truth, that you may practice justice and the whole law of the Most High, and do not permit yourselves to be tempted by the spirit of hatred. Hatred is evil, for it's the constant companion of deception, and it always contradicts the truth. A little thing it magnifies into a great thing. Light it takes for darkness, and sweet it calls bitter. And it teaches slander, and kindles anger, brings on war and violence, and fills the heart with devilish poison. I tell you of my own experience, that you may drive hatred out of your hearts, and cleave to the love of the Lord. Righteousness banishes hatred, and humility kills it. For he that fears to give umbrage to the Lord desires not to do wrong even in his thoughts. This is what I recognized at the last, after I had done penance on account of Joseph. For true atonement, pleasing to God, enlightens the eyes, illumines the soul with knowledge, and creates a counsel of salvation. My penance came in the form of a sickness of the liver that God inflicted on me. Without the prayers of my father Jacob, my spirit would have departed from me. For, through the organ with which man transgresses, he is punished. As my liver had felt no mercy for Joseph, unmerciful suffering was caused to me by my liver. My judgment lasted 11 months, as long as my hatred towards Joseph. And now, my children, each of you shall love his brother, and you shall uproot hatred from your hearts by loving one another in word and deed, and in the thoughts of the soul. For I spoke peaceably with Joseph in the presence of our father, but when I went out from before Jacob, the spirit of hatred darkened my understanding, and stirred up my soul to murder Joseph. If you see someone that has more good fortune than you, do not grieve, but pray for him, that his happiness may be perfect. And if one of the wicked should grow rich in substance, like Esau, my father's brother, do not envy him. Wait for the end of the Lord. This also tell to your children, that they shall honor Judah and Levi, for from them the Lord will cause a Savior to arise to Israel. For I know that in the end your children will fall off from God, and they will take part in wickedness and malice, and corruptness before the Lord. After Gad had rested a little while, he spoke again. My children, hear your father. Bury me with my fathers. Then he drew up his feet and slept in peace. After 5 years his sons carried his remains to Hebron, to his fathers. Asher's last words. In the 125th year of his life, while he was still robust in health, Asher summoned his children, and admonished them to walk in the ways of the Most High. Listen, you sons of Asher, to your father, and I will show you all that is right before God. 2 ways has God put before the children of men, and 2 inclinations has he bestowed on them, 2 kinds of actions, and 2 aims. Therefore, all things are in twos, the one the opposite of the other. But you, my children, you shall not be double, pursuing both goodness and wickedness. You shall cling only to the ways of goodness, for the Lord takes delight in them, and men yearn after them. Flee from wickedness, for thus you will destroy the wicked inclination. Heed well the commands of the Lord, by following the truth with a single mind. Observe the law of the Lord, and have not the same care for wicked things as for good things. Rather, keep your eyes on what is truly good, and guard it through all the commands of the Lord. The end of man, when he meets the messengers of God and of Satan, shows whether he was righteous or unrighteous in his life. If his soul goes out with agitation, she will be plagued by the evil spirit, whom she served with her lusts and evil deeds. But if she departs in tranquility, the angel of peace will lead her to eternal life. Be not like Sodom, my children, which did not recognize the angels of the Lord, that you are not delivered into the hands of your enemies, and your lands be cursed, and your sanctuary destroyed, and you be scattered to the four corners of the earth, scorned in confusion like stale water, until the time the Most High visits the earth and breaks the heads of the dragons. Tell this, my sons, to your children, that they be not disobedient toward God. For I read in the tablets of the heavens that you will be contumacious and act impiously toward him, in that you will have no care for the law of God, but you will heed human laws, and they are corrupted by reason of man's godlessness. Therefore you will be dispersed abroad like Dan and Gad, my brothers. In that case you will not know either your land or your tribe or your tongue. Nevertheless the Lord will gather you in his faithfulness, for the sake of his gracious mercy, and for the sake of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When Asher had made an end to these words, he commanded them to bury him in Hebron. He sank into a sweet sleep and died. His sons did as he had commanded, and they carried him up and buried him with his fathers. Benjamin extols Joseph. Benjamin was 125 years old, and he called his children to come to him. When they appeared, he kissed them and spoke, "As Isaac was born to Abraham in his old age, so was I born to Jacob when he was stricken in years. Therefore I was called Benjamin, the son of days. My mother, Rachel, died at my birth, and Bilhah her slave suckled me. Rachel had had no children for 12 years after bearing Joseph. Therefore she prayed to God, and fasted 12 days, and she conceived and bore me. Our father loved Rachel fondly, and he had longed greatly to have 2 sons by her. When I came down to Egypt and my brother Joseph recognized me, he asked, 'What did my brothers say to my father regarding me?' And I told him that they had sent Jacob his coat stained with blood, and had said, 'Know now whether this be your son's coat or not.' And Joseph said, 'This is what happened to me. Canaanite merchantmen stole me away with violence, and on the way they wanted to hide my coat, to make it seem as though a wild beast had met me and slain me. But he who was about to conceal it was torn by a lion, whereon his companions, in great fear, sold me to the Ishmaelites. My brothers, you see, did not deceive my father with a lie.' In this way Joseph tried to keep the deed of our brothers a secret from me. He also summoned my brothers, and enjoined them not to make known to our father what they had done to him, and told them to repeat the tale he had told me. Now, my children, love the Lord, the God of heaven and earth, and observe his commandments, taking that good and pious man Joseph as your model. Until the day of his death he would not divulge what his brothers had done to him. And although God revealed their actions to Jacob, he continued to deny it. Only after many efforts, when Jacob adjured him to confess the truth, was he induced to speak out. Even then he begged our father Jacob to pray for our brothers, that God would not account the evil they had done to him as a sin. And Jacob exclaimed, 'O my good child Joseph, you have shown yourself more merciful than I.' My children, have you observed the mercy of the good man? Imitate it with pure intention, that you too may wear crowns of glory. A good man has not an envious eye. He has mercy with all, even with sinners, even though their evil designs be directed against him. And by his good deeds he conquers the evil. since it was ordained of God. If you do good, the unclean spirits will depart from you, and even the wild beasts will stand in fear of you. The inclination of a good man lies not in the power of the tempter spirit Behar, for the angel of peace guides his soul. Flee from the malice of Beliar, whose sword is drawn to slay all that pay him obedience, and his sword is the mother of 7 evils: bloodshed, corruptness, error, captivity, hunger, panic, and devastation. Therefore, God surrendered Cain to 7 punishments. Once every 100 years the Lord brought a castigation on him. His afflictions began when he was 200 years old, and in his 900th year he was destroyed by the deluge, for having slain his righteous brother Abel. And those who are like Cain will be chastised forever, with the same punishments as his. Understand now, my children, that I am about to die. Practice truth and righteousness, and observe the law of the Lord, and also his commandments. This I bequeath you as your sole heritage, and you shall leave it to your children as an eternal possession. Thus Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did. They transmitted it to us, saying, "Observe the commands of God until the Lord shall reveal his salvation in the sight of all the heathen." Then you will see Enoch, Noah, Shem, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob rise up with rejoicing to a new life at the right hand of God. And we brothers, the sons of Jacob, will arise also, each of us at the head of his tribe, and we will pay homage to the King of heavens. After Benjamin had made an end of speaking so, he said, "I command you, my children, to carry my bones up out of Egypt and bury me near my fathers." And when he had made an end of saying these things, he fell asleep at a good old age. And they put his body into a coffin, and in the 91st year of their sojourning in Egypt, his sons and the sons of his brothers brought up the bones of their father in secret, and buried them in Hebron, at the feet of their fathers. Then they returned from the land of Canaan, and they lived in Egypt until the day of the exodus from the land. Job and the Patriarchs. Job, the most pious Gentile that ever lived, one of the few to bear the title of honor, the servant of God, was double kin to Jacob. He was a grandson of Jacob's brother Esau, and at the same time the son-in-law of Jacob himself, for he had married Dinah as his second wife. He was entirely worthy of being a member of the patriarch's family, for he was perfectly upright, one that feared God and avoided evil. Had he not wavered in his resignation to the divine will during the great trial to which he was subjected, and murmured against God, the distinction would have been conferred on him of having his name joined to the name of God in prayer, and men would have called on the God of Job as they now call on the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But he was not found steadfast like the 3 fathers, and he forfeited the honor God had intended for him. The Lord remonstrated with him for his lack of patience, saying, "Why did you murmur when suffering came on you? Do you think yourself of greater worth than Adam, the creation of my own hands, on whom together with his descendants I decreed death on account of a single transgression? And yet Adam murmured not. You are surely not more worthy than Abraham, whom I tempted with many trials, and when he asked, 'How will I know that I shall inherit the land?' and I replied, 'Know of a surety that your seed will be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and be afflicted by them for 400 years. Yet he murmured not. You do not esteem yourself more worthy than Moses, do you? Him I would not grant the favor of entering the promised land, because he spoke the words, 'Hear now, you rebels, shall we bring you forth water out of this rock?' And yet he murmured not. Are you more worthy than Aaron, to whom I showed greater honor than to any created being? For I sent the angels themselves out of the Holy of Holies when he entered the place. Yet when his 2 sons died, he murmured not." The contrast between Job and the patriarchs appears from the words spoken by him and words spoken by Abraham. Addressing God, Abraham said, "Be it far from you to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, so the righteous should be treated as the wicked." But Job exclaimed against God, "It is all the same. He destroys the perfect and the wicked." They both received their due recompense. Abraham was rewarded, and Job was punished. Convinced that his suffering was undeserved and unjust, Job had the audacity to say to God, "O Lord of the world, you did create the ox with cloven feet and the ass with unparted hoof. You created paradise and hell. You create the righteous, and you also create the wicked. There is no one to hinder you. You can do as seems good in your sight." The friends of Job replied, "It is true. God has created the evil inclination, but he has also given man the Torah as a remedy against it. Therefore, the wicked cannot roll their guilt off their shoulders and put it on God." The reason Job did not shrink from such extravagant utterances was because he denied the resurrection of the dead. He judged the prosperity of the wicked and the woes of the pious only by their earthly fortunes. Proceeding from this false premise, he held it to be possible that the punishment falling to his share was really not intended for him. God had slipped into an error. He had imposed the suffering on him that had been appointed to a sinner. But God spoke to him, saying, "Many hairs have I created on the head of man, yet each hair has its own sac. For were two hairs to draw their nourishment from the same sac, the man would lose the sight of his eyes. It has never happened that a sac has been misplaced. Should I, then, have mistaken Job for another? I let many drops of rain descend from the heavens. For each drop there is a mold in the clouds. For, were two drops to issue from the same mold, the ground would be made so miry that it could not bring forth any growth. It has never happened that a mold has been misplaced. Should I, then, have mistaken Job for another? Many thunderbolts I hurl from the skies, but each one comes from its own path. For, were two to proceed from the same path, they would destroy the whole world. It has never happened that a path has been misplaced. Should I, then, have mistaken Job for another? The gazelle gives birth to her young on the topmost point of a rock, and it would fall into the abyss and be crushed to death if I did not send an eagle there to catch it up and carry it to its mother. Were the eagle to appear a minute earlier or later than the appointed time, the little gazelle would perish. It has never happened that the proper minute of time was missed. Should I, then, have mistaken Job for another? The hind has a contracted womb, and would not be able to bring forth her young if I did not send a dragon to her at the right second, to nibble at her womb and soften it, for then she can bear. Were the dragon to come a second before or after the right time, the hind would perish. It has never happened that I missed the right second. Should I, then, have mistaken Job for another? Notwithstanding Job's unpardonable words, God was displeased also with his friends for having passed harsh judgment on him. A man may not be held responsible for what he does in anguish, and Job's agony was great. Next, Job's wealth and benefactions. End part 36 of 95, TheLegendsOfTheJews.com.